The date, April 9th, 2011, lives in infamy for residents of the small town of Mapleton, Iowa. The day began as an unusually warm spring day, and residents took time to work, practice their swing, and relax. Residents here hold dear their small-town roots in what long has been a regional hub for education, shopping, dining, and services. April 9th offered a way to shake off winter's grip and officially welcome spring.
Typical Saturday, breakfast at the Beef and Brew, yard work, had mowed the yard here at the museum.
I got a road bike and I went out and rode my bike for about 5 miles and decided to play a round of golf.
I worked till noon down here, and then I was basically, I think I was trying to get the house ready for graduation.
Spring cleanup, it was the day to get everything out.
But more than 100 miles west and still hours away, a brooding storm was gaining momentum over the Nebraska prairie. The early season storm was a swirl of massive wind, rain, and tornadoes. That evening, outside the Maple Valley Anthony High School, a group of student actors eased their last-minute jitters before taking the stage. Inside, hundreds of residents awaited laughs from a lighthearted school play.
We were joking around saying how, it's going to storm, like there are birds in the sky, or like, oh man, storm's coming.
Now Eileen, I know, I still have a blockage in my inner ear, and I can't stand up straight. It'll get better, you'll see.
One of the girls that was further towards the back of the stage with me, she's like, do you hear the sirens going off?
We were 10 minutes into our show, and our choir director, who was actually doing the lights for us, came up and said that there's a tornado warning.
We've been issued a tornado warning, so we're going to stop a little bit. We have locker rooms down on each side. Probably a good idea to give people just in case.
Well, we will be right back.
The stage was empty, but in the basement, students, teachers, and guests huddled quietly. Outside, the storm devastated up to 60% of the town's homes and businesses, leaving a path of destruction nearly 3/4 of a mile wide.
All of a sudden, the wind got so high you couldn't go anywhere.
It just sounded like a bunch of whistling and really loud wind blowing.
I could see my kids screaming, but I couldn't hear them.
We were in the cave, and I thought the whole house was coming in.
It seemed like forever. Kiss my ass goodbye, so to speak.
And we came out of the basement, it was pure devastation. Everything was just gone.
It just looked like a bomb had hit.
Debris, glass, power lines down.
Our garage was gone. I was certain our house was gone.
It was a maze of steel and iron. I was just numb from then on out.
It was just so surreal. It's like, wow, this is the town that you live in, that you work in, and all of a sudden it's destroyed.
Some residents were told to evacuate town.
I seen shingles and tree limbs swirling in the air. It got in my eyes really bad. And that's when I kind of got scared.
All I saw was the devastation on the west side of town.
I have a 1-year-old that's in town. I can't get to her.
Looked like it was completely wiped out.
They're okay, we just can't get to them.
We just can't get to them.
Many feared the worst. More than 15 ambulances had lined up, awaiting casualty reports.
If you don't believe in divine intervention, you do now, because you would not still be here if you saw what we saw and felt and heard. There is no way that a tornado can rip through a town like it did and nobody was killed.
I've seen a miracle. I've believed in miracles before, but now I've seen a miracle.
At around 6:30 p.m. on April 9th, National Weather Service radars detected rotation in eastern Nebraska. The storms, they said, were headed straight for Mapleton and nearby Castana.
Repeating, a tornado warning remains in effect until 7:30 p.m.
Storm spotters already were chastening the strengthening tornado. Monona County Sheriff Jeff Pratt braced for the worst.
As we followed that storm, we could just tell that it was impressive.
Pratt wasted no time issuing a warning. In fact, his next move is one that many say saved their lives.
It was moving in a direction that was headed towards either Mapleton or Castana, which is the community 7 miles south. And so that's why I said early on, tell my communications officers to go ahead and sound the sirens in the northeast portion of the county. There's a sinking feeling in your stomach that the worst is happening, and that's not what you want. I mean, we train for the worst, but that's not what you want to see.
We were all in the bathtub waiting it out, and then that's when my husband, he hollered for me, come up quick. So I ran upstairs, and he was on the front porch, and he had the door open, and we faced the schoolhouse, and he said, look.
And then I saw it coming across this cornfield. It turned black. We knew we were going to get hit hard.
And by the time I made it to the end of this gravel road here, I was saying, I believe I have a tornado in Mapleton. And they were confirming not only a tornado, but a very large tornado.
I think I was screaming, and I was running as fast as I could. And we got downstairs, and I got in the tub, and the freight train was coming.
There was a lot of frantic people in town.
We got debris in the road. This is Mapleton, Iowa. It's 7:30. They've lost, there's stuff falling from the sky right now.
What do you do? Where do you go? Who needs help? Who's hurt?
After hours of frantic searching and cleanup, the town's residents were all accounted for. Many of them were shaken.
Hello?
But not one of them had died.
I won't kid you, I used to, we don't need to go downstairs. There was something different that night.
I think somebody was looking out for this community, a higher being, and I still today believe that, because we could have been just like everybody else. We could have been devastated with loss of lives and injuries, and we didn't have that, and we were very, very fortunate.
So what defines this small town in northeast Monona County?
They're very faithful people, down-to-earth, great people. They know that they rely upon the good Lord for everything they have, and they are very considerate of what they've been blessed with.
Very hardworking. People have, I think, a real pride in their homes. You drive up and down the streets of Mapleton, you don't see a lot of junk yards or, places that aren't maintained. It's a contagious thing.
The town serves as a thriving hub for regional business, education, and dining. But in recent years, like many small towns, its future was uncertain.
I'm not going to say that Mapleton needed a tornado to come together, but the community was at a point where it was kind of like a point of a crossroads. A lot of businesses, were trying to make tough decisions on whether or not they were going to continue here.
A lot of small communities are a close-knit community, but it takes some sort of devastation or disaster or whatever to really pull them close.
We're such a close community anyway, but throughout this we became even closer. Whether it was your best friend or your worst enemy, and we were all out there working together to clean up our town, really.
A miracle, I guess it's one of those things you don't expect. It's one of those things that when you look at all the components that lead up to it, the story ends up maybe differently than most people would expect.
I truly feel that my presence here is not by coincidence. I feel a certain calling to be here at this time, to serve them and to walk this journey with them until we get back on our feet more strongly again.
Before heavy machinery cleared the town of debris, residents worked to reassemble the scattered pieces of their lives, one small piece at a time.
Somebody had brought me a picture of a lady. She'd lost everything. She'd lost her house. And I was telling them about how she'd lost her house, and clear up where we live across town, somebody reached in their pocket and said, "This belongs to her." At that time, I realized we needed to have a place to put all of these items. So we started bringing them to the church and down to the community center and all of the places. They realized that that was important, so they ferry it up here a couple of times a day. People come in with maybe 1 or 2 items and bring it to us, and then people come by and look at it and say, "Oh boy, here's a picture of my little girl," and they take them away, and it's really heartwarming.
In the week following the tornado, more than 10,000 volunteers cleared debris and uprooted trees, repaired homes and businesses. Schools from across the state bussed in student volunteers.
You know, it was home for 31 years, and it's difficult to suddenly have basically nothing but our lives. We did find out we have wonderful friends, an awesome family that rallied. People I haven't seen for 7, 8 years, you know, that suddenly showed up on our doorstep and just said, "Let us help." It's kind of stunning because we don't have a lot of that in today's world.
I think that it's bringing people together. I'm closer to my neighbors than I have been my whole life. People that I didn't agree with in the past, I'm waving to, stuff like that. It's real neat how it's working out.
I think our community might be more giving, and I'm not saying they weren't before, but just a little touch of that understanding of how other people function when they have a crisis.
I think if you ever had a doubt that you wanted to remain in this community, I think it changed. It certainly did for our family. We had, the day before the tornado, made a decision that we were going to stay in Mapleton.
Has he been around all day?
Yeah, I'm up at Timber Ridge on the
Okay.
Whippoorwill.
I actually have somewhat of a stake in this community now compared to what I did in the past, because I've watched it be somewhat taken down, destroyed, and start to be rebuilt, and I feel like I'm part of that rebuilding process. The goal, you know, that you want to get people back into their homes and the community back to where it was. And I think Mapleton will actually be better and stronger than it was before, which is kind of a neat thing.
Something's moving through here. Initially it was a tornado, and I think now it's something much greater.
I think we see what we have here, and we didn't want to lose it. Everybody in the community has been affected by it. We'll remember, it's one of those events in your life where you remember where you were, when it happened, what you were doing.
For many, holding on to what they had meant making home repairs and piecing together their belongings. For others, like the Gosch and the Peters families, it meant starting over.
And their new homes are going to be monuments to the success of recovery.
You got to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and put that face on and go back to work, because that's the only way it's going to get here. It's an emotional roller coaster. I mean, you'll do real good for a few days, and then something will just kind of slap you in the face, and all of a sudden you're bawling. You know, it's you lose everything, and it's tough to rebuild.
"8 days later, religious leaders offered comfort and context through the message of Palm Sunday.
Let us pray to the Lord. Lord, have mercy. Help, save, comfort, and defend us, gracious Lord. Amen.
May this day, may this Sunday, be a Sunday of new beginnings. May the phoenix arise out of the ashes that we see all around us. If you take a look around and you see many homes that have been destroyed in Mapleton, it is amazing that not one life has perished because of that.
Rebirth in the church means Jesus is rising from the dead. And as you go around town, you can see little tiny places that are just completely full of rubble. And you might see a flower coming up. And you might see trees starting to bloom. And you see babies. And you see a lot of interesting things. You know, the town is not dead. The town is alive. And people, their attitude is alive. It's upbeat.
The fact that Mapleton was spared fatalities and serious injuries shifted residents' attention to a larger question.
We'll never probably know what was in play. Something was in play. Whether Mother Nature was had something to do with it or whether God did, we don't know.
Were lives here spared because of warning, luck, or something much greater?
I got the belief that we got plenty of help upstairs. You know, there's a lot of people up there.
Truly, considering the vast amount of destruction here in the community, it truly is a miracle that no one was killed.
A lot of people in the community think Miracle in Mapleton is like kind of a funny little thing. It was a miracle in Mapleton and they laugh about it, you know, but I think really down deep they know that it was something special.
And they really have reached out to God and they've said, hey, you know what? God was with me in that time or I never would have been able to make it through those 10 minutes.
The tornado halted everything April 9th, including the school play. But the show had to go on. The Orpheum Theater in Sioux City offered its stage as a way to perform in a fundraiser for relief efforts.
We were all really excited, and we kind of weren't aware, I don't think, of just how many people would come. And the Orpheum sits more than the entire town of Mapleton.
More than 1,000 tickets were sold, and busloads of Mapleton residents arrived to celebrate an uninterrupted performance.
You get nervous seeing the first 2 rows of our gym, and that's only, 20, 30 people maybe.
Gee, Carrie, I don't see myself being much of a cowpoke. I don't see myself slapping heifers around all day.
Even though you never think it's going to happen to you, it could. And I think that how people came together, people always remember that. So if anything ever happens to a neighboring town, I'm sure we'll be there in a heartbeat because they were there for us.
How everyone's kind of pulled together, and we're really close. And it's I'm very proud to say I'm from a small community, especially from Mapleton.
The lighthearted play, Taming the Wild Wild West in a Dress, evoked smiles and laughs. For those who had a role in this comedy and those who were there to support them, it was truly a night to celebrate. It also brought a sigh of relief, signaling that just as one chapter of life had ended, another would begin.